Assalamu alaikum, family, peace, healing, and light. And welcome back to another episode of Healing with Angelica's podcast, where we discuss all things healing. And if you are new to the show, welcome, 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 beautiful souls. On today's episode, we have an amazing guest joining us today, student minister, Brother Daniel Muhammad, as we'll be discussing today's well-needed topic. Battle of the sexes, the war within the Black family. Brother Daniel, welcome and thank you so much for joining me today. It is a pleasure to have you on the show. How are you?
I'm well, sis. The honor is all mine. Thank you for the invitation, and I look forward to the discussion.
Yes, sir. Praise be to Allah. And I know most of my viewing audience do know who you are. However, for those who may not know, I would like to give a brief bio. Brother Daniel Muhammad is a dedicated student minister within the Nation of Islam, serving as the assistant minister to Minister Ishmael Muhammad at Mosque Maryam in Chicago. Daniel is also a national master in chess, showcasing his strategic prowess both in spirituality and on the chessboard. Alongside these achievements, he holds black belt in two martial arts systems, karate and VSK, I may say this wrong, Jiujitsu.
Jiu-jitsu, yes.
Jiu-jitsu. He is a proud family man and business owner, embodying a life of faith, martial arts, strategic thinking, and entrepreneurship. Praise be to Allah.
Praise be to Allah.
Yes. Now let's get started on today's episode, Battle of the Sexes. And please, for my audience today, do not hesitate to put any question you may have that is related to today's topic on in the comment box below for Brother Daniel Muhammad. So, Battle of the Sexes, the war within the Black family. It examines the gender dynamic and conflicts that impact Black families. This exploration seeks to understand how historical, culture, and social economic factors contribute to internal struggle between genders. By shedding light on these issues, this aims to foster dialogues, promoting healing, and highlighting the power, resilience, and strength of the Black families. Praise be to Allah. And that brings me to my first question for you, Brother Daniel. So, what does external social pressure, or I'm sorry, how does external social pressure influences the internal gender struggles within the Black families?
Beautiful. First, as always, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness there is no God but Allah, who appeared to us in the person of Master Fard Muhammad, the Great Mahdi. We thank him for coming and raising up the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, his great Messiah. And we thank the two of them for leaving in our midst the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. It is in their names that I greet you and your audience in the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
So to kick off the discussion, this generation in particular, how we have access to social media, we have access to everyone's lives, we have access to behind the scenes footage. And a lot of times, I really think this is one of the sicknesses, not that social media doesn't have any good, but one of the sicknesses is that everyone puts their best foot forward to the world. Mm-hmm. They don't show the internal struggles. They don't show the difficulties. They don't show the arguments. All you see is them booed up, smiling at each other at Disney World or on some vacation. And we begin to foster a lot of ideologies that are just unrealistic. Mm-hmm. So when we look at our future spouses or our current spouses, whether we're single or married, a lot of the expectations that we put on each other is just unrealistic. It's like, what are you talking about? And one of the most important things that the minister teaches us to do when we're trying to foster healthy relationships is that in the study guides, which I encourage everybody to get, because relationships, even though it's two parties coming together, if both parties are not working on an individual level, on their own healing, on their own state of being and mind and health, then it's going to cause a conflict in the relationship. So the minister put it in a beautiful way in the study guides. I believe it was the struggle for balance. And he said that we must first start with the proper basis. And the proper basis is that our relationship with Allah is first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
Before we can ever properly interact with anybody else, he said that the primary need has to be sufficed. And the primary need, which is first need, is with Allah. And if we take anyone outside of that or we take anyone who is not Allah outside of their secondary and tertiary needs, and we try to put them in that primary position, that's where most of the conflict starts. Because now you're putting on your partner or your spouse or your loved one an expectation that is really only for God.
Mm.
And then that's when the difficulties come in, because whenever Allah is not sufficient, then you try to make everybody else and everything else sufficient for you. And it's just impossible, because we're flawed. We're all works in progress. None of us have it together. Yeah. We're all in need of healing. And when we start from that basis, I think we'll have a much better discussion, as opposed to the base where everybody, I see all of the conversations online, right? What do you bring to the table?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you bring to the table? Yes, they should bring something to the table. I'm not saying be a bum. But what I'm saying is, do we really understand who we are, what our value is, what's our relationship with Allah? And when that's in the proper perspective, then I can look at my wife, and when she's operating on all cylinders, praise be to Allah. And when she has those moments of deficiency, it's okay. Praise be to Allah. Why? Because I know that I'm not perfect. And that relationship with the Creator is how we can become more tolerant with one another. Because we know how often we disappoint Allah. And when you realize how imperfect we are on our personal levels with Allah, then it's like, okay, how can I be wrong? How can I be foul? How can I be disappointing? And then not allow my partner or my spouse or my loved one or my wife or husband to also have some of those same defects as well. So I just believe we're in a world where, we're just not perceiving properly. Everybody's, how they say everybody's capping about their own personal reality and their relationship reality.
Listen, praise be to Allah, because I definitely understand that. And I think it was just me being able to look within self, like you stated. We always have to go back and look into self before we put these expectations on other people, and also the influence that we do have with just social media in general. So that takes me to my next question. Actually, I know you talked about social media, but I want to talk about just the whole media in general, like the music industry. We got propaganda with just news and things that's going on. So do you mind diving deep into what impact does the media representation have? Because what they show us out here with the men and female relationships. How does that have a gender dynamic? I'm sorry, let me say this again. What impact does media representation have on gender dynamics or roles within a Black family?
Beautiful. So that's a big question, because we can go in so many angles, probably for the rest of the show, with just that question alone. But what I believe the media improperly plays, as far as its effect on the psyche, right, is that it gives to us a false representation of what a man is and a false representation of what a female is. And because the lines are blurred, right, in the Holy Quran, chapter 4, it talks about how there are specific roles for the man, and then there are specific roles for the women. But if the media gives us an image, which is very powerful, by the way, but the image is contrary to everything that the Holy Quran and the Bible teach us, then that's where the problem starts. So in the book of Isaiah, Allah said it a little differently. He said, my ways are not your ways. My thoughts are not your thoughts. Mine are from above, while yours are from beneath. And what that scripture shows us is that there is a difference of understanding between how Allah wants one thing and then how the world represents and gives to us another thing. And because there's this gap, we're taking on the world's perspective, when in reality we should be taking on Allah's perspective, because as the 4th chapter also says, is that he's orchestrated all of the affairs of everything in creation. And when you're operating in congruence with what Allah created you to be, then that's where the harmony, the peace, the contentment of mind, the happiness, the joy, that's where it comes from. But when you're contrary to how Allah created a thing, then that's where the discord, the disharmony, the lack of peace, and all of those characteristics begin to manifest. So because media is telling a man that he's really his reproductive organ, right? A man should have 15 women, you know what I'm saying? And if I can, yeah, I mean, you know what I'm saying? That's how men are coming off. So we bring that to our relationships, to the women that we're interested in. And it's all based in emptiness. And what I mean by emptiness is there's a shield, right, that we put before the world. But when you peer behind the veil and you just look a little bit deeper, it's like, ooh, ting, 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 ting. It ain't much in here. I see a lot of echoes and it ain't nothing reverberating. Why? Because there's nothing to support that egotistical perspective. And that's what they make a man to be. Everything is hoorah. Everything is macho. And I'm not saying that there's not a place for that, but that's not the summary or the totality of what a man is. And then on the contrary side, they give to the woman the opposite, right? Sometimes I won't even say the opposite. They give to her the same thing. So the woman is like, well, I'm independent. I'm self-sufficient. Can't nobody tell me nothing. Why do I need to submit to a man? And there's some truth in that. But as the Quran says, Satan is always mixing up truth with falsehood. So it sounds good because women do deserve freedom, justice, and equality. But freedom doesn't mean lose your mind. Freedom doesn't mean get out of the divine order that Allah has placed you in. And because the media is always giving us these false ideals, most of us come to the relationship, like I said earlier, and it's all cap. It's hard to really engage on a personal level because that's where really the beauty of a relationship comes from. It's not the outer shell. It's not the superficial things. It's really the essence of the two parties. And that's why sometimes, I'm the brothers get on me more than those sisters will, because men, we tend to be, more observant with the physical appearance. But that's why you can have a sister who is drop dead gorgeous, right? But when you talk to her, it's empty. And it's like, man, she's beautiful and it's attracting my eye, but there's something lacking. It's like, ugh, right? And then you can have a sister who, what brothers would call mid. You're average, you're, basic, or whatever they want to label it as. But when you talk to her, the conversation is rich. You're on the higher levels of language, the higher levels, which we know is the divine revealed word of Allah. And then it's that sister that you thought was average, but as she continues to talk, she begins to turn more beautiful. And the reason is you all are connecting on a level that's deeper than what the media is giving to the world, because the media just wants you to look off superficial things. Is she shapely? Is he handsome? Does he have muscles? Is she feminine? Does she have her nails done? And these are super fit. Now, I'm not saying come out looking like Bugaboo and Boogaboo, right? But I'm also saying that can't be the end all be all. And this world always gives to us all of these false facades, these outer shells, and it really throws people off. But when you begin to connect on an internal level, then that's where either the emptiness manifests or the substance manifests. And that's what I think is the difference between Allah's way and then Satan's way.
As you're talking, and I think like the gist of all the conversations that I even have ever had, always just go back to how Allah God is really the foundation of it all. And when it comes to being able to help in healing the Black family, I always go back to source, which is Allah. So that brings me to my next question for you. Give me a moment here. How can putting Allah God as a foundation of our solution in the war within the Black families?
Well, that is the key, whether the world wants to accept it or not. And the reason for that is kind of what we discussed in your first question about the balance, the struggle for balance, right? And how Allah is our primary need. If you think about the term primary, you can't get to secondary, third, fourth, fifth, sixth tier until the primary is done. Your ABCs and 1, 2, 3 is primary school education. You cannot go to calculus. You cannot go to algebra. You cannot go to geometry if you're failing 1 + 1 is 2. A says add, B says but, C says cut. So the primary need is your base to make sure that you're properly understanding everything that comes down the line. Does that make sense? So Allah is that primary need. And when we establish that connection with him, then everything else begins to put itself in its proper place. You can see more clearly. And that's why, when we read about the prophecies of this figure who would come at the end of the world, the Messiah, right? What makes him open the eyes of the blind? He teaches the people how to establish a proper connection with Allah. And in that proper connection with Allah, now you see clearly. Now you hear clearly. Now you do the activities of a living person clearly. And once those and that relationship and connection is established, I mean, we could save ourselves a lot of time. But the problem is, again, going back to the media, they take God out of the equation. And they say, you know, make your own decision, brother. You got to live with it for the rest of your life. You got to live with him for the rest of your life. You better get what you like. And what you like changes. You know, I've realized that the food that I used to eat when I was younger is different now. When I was younger, I used to go to camp. It was choke sandwiches all day. Don't give me no mustard. Don't give me no ketchup. All I want is the meat, the cheese, and the bread. But now, if you ask me for a sandwich, my taste buds have changed. So now I want some cucumbers on it. I want some green peppers on it. I want some things on my sandwich now because I've evolved and my taste has changed. But the enemy tells you to pick your partner based off of taste. So 5 years from now, when your taste buds change and you mature, now things that you thought were important at 20 don't turn to be out as important at 30. And now you're looking at that same person, you're like, dang, whoo, I'm stuck with this for the rest of my life. You know what I'm saying? But in reality, if we start with Allah first, he is the one that's going to give us everything that we need and more. And even, I won't say more importantly, but along with that, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said that a man is not deserving of a woman unless he knows his vision for his own life. So again, it's that personal healing that needs to take place first before you go grab what you need. Because if you grab the wrong thing because your vision is wrong or incorrect, then when the vision begins to actualize itself, and you're like, man, I think I was born on this planet to do X, Y, and Z. Now that's how you survey what woman is sufficient for you, because the Quran and the Bible teach that the woman is the helpmeet. And if she's the helpmeet, what is she helping you to meet? If your goals are changing and you want to be a rap artist today and then tomorrow you want to be a construction worker, is you got to have that together. So it all goes back to the self. It always goes back to our relationship with Allah, what Allah brought us forth on this planet to do. And then from there, we can branch off into the other aspects of mathematics and knowledge. But if those primary ones are not satisfied, then we're always going to be confused. And you may be satisfied for 3 years, but 5 through 10, the 5th year through the 10th year, now you're looking crazy. You know what I'm saying? And we believe, especially in the Nation of Islam, that your selection of a spouse is a lifelong journey. It's not something that you're going to switch out just because now you're sophisticated. Now I'm going to divorce this one and go pick up this one because she's a help me for this. Nah, that ain't how this works. This is not cherry picking. You know?
I love how you broke that down. Praise be to Allah. That brings me to my next question for you. And you guys, if you guys have any question for my brother Daniel, please put it in the comment box below. I told y'all, don't let me be the only one asking questions here. So y'all go ahead and ask some questions. So that brings me to my next question. So we are taught that there are 3 sciences that were kept from us. One of them being the science of mating. Could you explain how not having the proper education of this science hinders the Black family?
Absolutely. Beautiful question. So for those 3, the minister said that the sciences that the slave master never taught us were the science of business, the science of warfare, and the science of mating. And it goes back to everything that we've already been discussing, which means that we don't know the science of it, so we're feeling our way through it. And let me take it out of relationships for a second. When you take it out of relationships, it's a lot easier to understand. I have a martial arts school, right? And when I first started, I did not have the science of business. So I opened my doors and I was taking some insurance risks. I was just doing what I thought was best, how I was trained as a young man coming up in the dojo in the martial arts school. But in regards to business, it was absolutely, I can't call it, it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
But what I did was one day I said, okay, something's not adding up because I'm feeling my way through it. I'm bumping my head on this wall, but now I need some guidance, right? And because I needed guidance, I went out and flew out to New York. I found a person that I really respected. I saw them running a beautiful business. And when I went out there, I said, hey, just give me 3 days. I paid my way here. I flew here on my own dime. I got my own hotel room. I just want to sit in your school with your permission and just study your business. And I sat there with pen and pad for 3 days and I just learned. And once I had the science of business, right, how to run a martial arts school, I saw the trajectory of my school go from just having some good athletes and good martial artists to having some bills getting covered. Uh-oh, the rent is covered. Uh-oh, now I can take some money home. Uh-oh, now I can hire some people. Uh-oh. And the trajectory started to change. But what made the difference? I stopped feeling my way through it and searching for the answer. And I actually took the science approach. It's the same thing with mating. Most of us are bumping our head on those same walls with relationships because we don't know the science. So we're feeling our way through. We're taking unnecessary risks. We're spinning our wheels. We're not really seeing benefit or profit, right? And we're just doing that over and over and over again. And we have a bad relationship with another bad relationship with another bad relationship. And then we get frustrated. And it's like, whatever. Maybe I'm just meant to be single. No, you're not meant to be single. It's just that we have to relearn the science that we lost. And once we have the science, which is given to us from our minister, and once we apply the science, hello to the believers right there, right? Because a lot of us have the science, but emotions get involved and feelings get involved, and we lose the knowledge that we have because we never applied it. But once we apply the science of mating and actually go through the courtship process and ask the necessary questions and sit with our brother captain, sister captain, brother minister, sister minister, if you got one, and we're going through the process properly, then that scientific process is going to lead to better results. But if we try to avoid that because we don't want folks in our business, you know what I'm saying? Who made him qualified to tell me what to do and whether or not I can say yes or no? We get guilty. And that's when you start hitting that wall, bumping that head, and then hindsight, you always realize, like, dang, I should have did this the right way from the jump.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. Praise be to Allah. Thank you for breaking that down. I see we have a question here. I told y'all, come on with the questions now. I see a question here from Brother Marcus Tusan Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum. Question: in Islam, it is said, according to the hadith, Allah strongly dislikes divorce. Please explain why from a spiritual perspective.
Absolutely. And I believe it's in the Quran as well. Hadith, of course, is the sayings of Prophet Muhammad and things like that. But I believe the Holy Quran says Allah hates divorce, right? And I know the minister said that as well. But with that, the reason from a spiritual perspective, Allah hates divorce is because the relationship between a man and a woman is a journey for the two parties to become one.
Ooh.
That same science or that same spiritual significance is the same relationship that we have with Allah. So the same way that me and my wife are striving to become one, me with Allah shall also be striving to become one. And you are what you repetitively do, right? So if I'm always abandoning the struggle, the journey, I want to divorce over here. Okay, I'm involved in these activities. I'm not going no more. I quit. Okay, I'm trying to lose weight. Man, to hell with my fitness trainer. I quit. If you're constantly always quitting, then what do you think you're going to take to your relationship with Allah? You're going to bring that same mentality. So when Allah puts a trial on you or puts a test on you, which is really meant to purify you and to bring you closer up into his mind, we abandon it. Oh man, I'm not fit for this. And that pattern of always quitting, always giving up, always divorcing from the situation will never allow you to, on a personal level, ascend to the heights of the elevated places and grow into the mind of God. Sister Ava put it in another way that I thought was very beautiful. She said in one of her books, I don't recall which one, but she said, may Allah be pleased with her, that it is through the woman that the man learns how to submit to Allah. Meaning that if I don't have that marriage and I can't study and analyze my wife, then I'm already at a deficiency when I go to my relationship with Allah and try to grow up into him, because it's through her acquiescing at times. It's through her knowing that her answer may be better, but since he is in authority, he's not seeing it like I see it. So let me submit and just give him this pass. Those are essential qualities that we need to grow up into the mind of God. But where does the man learn it from? He learns it from the woman. The woman is the secret of God. So when you study the woman, you study the secrets of God. Look at this, Sister Angelica. The woman has a natural, according to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, right? He taught that Allah is self-created. And after Allah's self-creation, he found within himself a second self. So he pulled out of himself that second self, or the woman, before the sun, moon, and stars. So look at this. Now, since we have that science, let's put two little molecules, if you will, two atoms inside of an all dark room.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Time itself does not begin until woman is created, because time is the measurement between 2 points. So if there is not a second, there is no time. So time begins with the woman.
Ooh.
Now, when the woman is created out of Allah and these two parties exist, time begins. How do we know what Allah was doing in the darkness of in the space of triple darkness, right? How do we know what he is doing during that time if there's no light to manifest and show us what he is doing?
Mm-hmm.
So the one that recorded what Allah was doing in his struggle against triple darkness was who? The female. So the female has a nature where she studies the man. She observes the man. Mm-hmm. She knows what makes him tick. She knows what makes him happy. She knows what comforts him. She knows what consoles him in the good, the positive, and all the way down to the negative side, because she knows how to put that little finger in the corner of the eye and get you mad and upset and pop it off, right? So she studies and knows the nuances of her man, and that's how a woman can suffice a need before the man even verbalizes it. Ooh. You know, he starts getting foamy at the mouth, and all of a sudden she come over with a glass. Well, oh, yeah, thanks, babe. And now you drinking some water because she learned the nuances, how to communicate with you outside of the verbal context. She's studying your facial expression, your language, your voice inflection, your mannerism. She's studying all of those things. So to grow up into the mind of Allah, the man now has to do those same things. So now to get up into Allah's mind, I have to study the God. I have to know why he said, what spirit did he say it in, what tone did he say it in, and in that I can understand why God did what he did. Oof. So it's not until you study the woman that you actually get a closer access to Allah. And that's why when we study the life of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, we begin to see that it's a reason, you know, he talks about how he's a very sensitive man and how in his inception, his mother desired a daughter, right? These are little things that may not seem big. It may just seem like a story, but when you dig into it, you begin to realize that we have a minister. I don't want y'all to get silly with it, but we have a minister, right, who is in tune with the feminine aspect of Allah. Mm. And he has learned how to accentuate, because remember, the woman is created from Allah looked within himself and saw a second self within him. So the woman was already there. So the minister is tapping into that feminine expression of Allah, and he's learning how to study, how to observe. What's the nuance? What's the inflection? What's the spirit? What's the mannerisms? You following me? And then now he's learned how to grow into the mind of God, where now that journey, he has become fused with the Father. But why? Because he, number one, was married. Let's not get it twisted. Mother Khadijah Farrakhan. He was married. So he had something to study. But along with him having his beautiful wife to study, he also was in tune with that side of himself that allowed for him to grow up into the mind of Allah. So as we started with the book of Isaiah, my ways are not your ways, my thoughts are not your thoughts. Now he's bridged that gap. So now his thoughts are Allah's thoughts. His ways are Allah's ways. But how did he get there? Through the feminine expression.
Woo! Lord, you broke that down. Praise be to Allah. Thank you so much. Marcus. Yes, and I see here we done got a lot of questions in since that one. So let me see here. And also, you guys, if you guys are enjoying this episode just as well as I am, please, please, please go ahead and put your fires in the comment box. I need them fires in the comment box to some interaction here. And also, again, if you're enjoying this episode just as well as I am, please, please, please show your support by supporting today by texting the word donate to 937-313-2466 today to help sustain future episodes just like this. Also, if you are enjoying all of the broadcasts here on CTG Broadcast, please show your support as well by donating today. I will put information below on your screen to donate. I love you all. Now let's get back to today's episode, Battle of the Sexes, the War Within the Black Family with Brother Daniel Muhammad. Praise be to Allah. So let's go here to the next question. Thank you for your question, Brother Marcus. Give me a moment. This is a beautiful question. And she said a lot. So I have Sister Atia J. Assalamu alaikum. There's a lot of talk of polygamy. I hope I said that right.
Polygamy.
Polygamy. Sorry, polygamy and polyamory on social media.
Mm-hmm.
We know in the Nation of Islam, this is not permitted. In the Quran, it is permitted a man take multiple wives if he can take care of them. In your perspective, is this a viable option for our people outside of the Nation of Islam to build better families if the man has the means?
So again, Sister Atia, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. But it goes back to us abandoning the true solution. The true solution is to take care of the primary need. So even if you're introducing concepts that some are in the Quran, some are not, right? But even if you're introducing concepts, but if you're missing the key ingredient, which is Allah, then it won't bear any fruit. So do I believe that it is a viable option for our people outside of the Nation of Islam? Absolutely not. And the reason I say that is because we fail to realize, as your show, Sister Angelica, Healing with Angelica, you can't take on additional weight and burden when you're not even made whole yet.
Ooh.
And when even in this position of the Quran permitting polygamy for a man to take up to 4 wives, right? Those were done under specific circumstances and specific conditions of warfare, of lack of men being present and being killed off during war. So Allah, out of his mercy and not wanting the two or the females to fall upon themselves, he in that specific instant allowed for polygamy to be permitted. But the Quran also balances it out and says that one is best for you if you but knew. And when we look at our minister and when we look at the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, they share those same sentiments. One is best for you if you but knew. They're not talking from lack of experience. They're telling you what they've had to gone through. So it behooves us to take their understanding and just apply it, even if we don't understand. But to further that point, though, the reason that some of those things are not fit for us at this time is because, again, once we get in tune with the primary need, which is Allah, we begin to see how unwhole, how broken we really are. Ooh. Sister Angelica, have you ever heard of the term epigenetics?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Epigenetics, for those who may not know, is a term where they talk about how in the genetic material of the human being, you have a genome and then you have an epigenome.
Mm-hmm.
And the epigenome is like these markers that are inside of the genetic material of the human being that came from dietary ways, that came from conditioning, that came from trauma, came from experiences. And these little epigenetic markers don't really identify themselves. They just tend to manifest at particular times.
Yes.
That similar science, for those when we were studying Dianetics, we learned that similar science through the reactive mind, that there's just certain things that pop up and trigger us. We may not be able to source it. We may not be able to know where it comes from, but it has bearings on how we behave. Because we're broken, and of course, the society tries to encourage us, oh, slavery was such a long time ago, forget about it. No. Mm-mm. Because that is just a cultural and political verbiage. But when you look at the science of it, we know that we can't take on that ideology because scientifically, the science doesn't support that ideology. Why am I saying that? Because in slavery, when we really go through the journey of what happened, there were some genetic markers that were placed in us as human beings.
Yes.
I'll share this story. I'm not going to say any names, but there was a brother who shared with me, and he's very talented, super talented. And he said, man, you know what? My pops never really like says that if he ever likes anything that I do, I have to hear it from other people about something that he said when I wasn't present. He never says to me X, Y, and Z. And I said, well, brother, I get it. You know, be patient with your father. But I said, but remember something. And this goes back to epigenetics.
Yes.
I said, do you know that in slavery, if our sons or our family members did something that we were proud of, as men, we couldn't display that gratitude, that thankfulness, that appreciation,
Ooh.
because our shows of appreciation and gratitude to our lineage, to our wife, to our children, would have only manifested in the slave master sending them off, taking them to another plantation, or trying to prove that he's the man by coming in the cabin in the middle of the night to take my wife, who was laying next to me, from me. So as men, due to that experience of slavery, we've had to learn to appreciate things and then hold the, boss face.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, yeah, whatever. It's nothing. And that epigenetic marker has been on the black man ever since that time. So now we come full circle where now we're supposed to be free, justified, and made equal. But now our sons are doing things, our daughters are doing things, and we're still with those same epigenetic markers, looking at them as if we're not impressed. As opposed to saying, you know what, this boy, epigenetics goes in the positive too. Because I have a little son, and one day we were in the dojo, and I know I never taught this boy this move. But he was like 5 years old, and he just turns out, does a spin kick, bow, catches the boy in the head. And I'm like, whoa, I don't even teach spin kicks to 5-year-olds. Where the heck you get that from? But there's positive epigenetic markers as well. He has something in his blood from having a martial arts father that just manifested at that time. Ooh. So in the positive, it happens, but also in the negative, it happens. So this is why in those study guides, which is so important for all the believers, we got to come out to them Fridays. We got to study these in our own spare time, because the study guides also tell us that we should always be in a state of self-analysis, self-examination, self-reflection, self-correction, right? And if I'm doing that, I can catch myself when that reactive mind or that epigenetic marker is manifesting. You know what my son just did? Oh, I'm over here stone face. Oh, let me shake that off. Go ahead, boy. Yeah. Oh, that's my boy. Fire him up and get excited about it, because I have to break that generational curse. Yes. I'm not saying generational curse in the sense of the cliche. I'm saying generational curse as in epigenetics. We're cursed. And because these factors not only exist in the dynamic of our relationship with our children, but it also exists in the dynamic of the relationship with our spouse. Ooh. And I've always had to self-reflect as well. Why is that? Because I've saw myself at certain times having a cold type of demeanor towards my wife, and she'll, women could be dramatic. I'm not gonna put her business out there, but y'all tend to be dramatic a little bit, Sister Angelica. So I'm like, oh my God, really, really? But after I dwelled on the minister's words, and I said, you know what? Self-examination, self-analysis, self-correction. You know what? Am I tweaking? And then I had to identify some of the epigenetic markers in myself. And I said, man, I can't be cold like this to my wife. I can't just do this type of way to my wife. She deserves better. So because of that constant state of reflection, it may not feel natural. First, it may feel a little forced. Ooh. But after you do it forced a couple of times, just know that you're reprogramming the coding of who you are. And as I began to reprogram, now I find myself trying to do hugs more. Now I find myself kissing her on the forehead more. Now I find myself having conversations that I probably would have avoided back in the day, but now I'm having those conversations because I realized that as a man and as a husband and as a father, I had to heal. Ooh. And when I began to heal myself, I could be of greater benefit to my wife, to my family, to my children. But to even have the conversation of polygamy and polyamory, when I know what we're dealing with on an internal genetic level, we're just not ready for that conversation. And when we are ready, just know it's not going to be under our own volition or our own analysis of who we are and whether or not we're healed. It will come from the messenger of Allah, and he will give us the order of whether or not that is permissible or whether or not we should stand down and do what is best, which is what the Quran says. One is best for you if you but knew.
Ooh. I'm so glad you did, my sister, ask that question. Praise be to Allah. Thank you so much for that question, sis, because I am seeing a lot of that when we see the battle of the sexes, and then we see how, my perspective is that, you see the man saying that it's in a man's nature to want more than one woman. Honestly, I don't believe that it's the man's nature. I just believe it's just not having discipline enough to have one woman. Mm-hmm. But when you go back and you look into the science, and you brought up epigenetics and how we have these markers within us from just things that we've been through in the past, that's not really us actually like we got it from ourselves actually, but just things that we went through from slavery and stuff like that. So you actually answered one of my questions and how slavery kind of played a big significant role in the war between Black families. Um, I do want to kind of get more in depth about that because I truly believe that if we was to know and actually, because honestly, I'm gonna be honest, before I joined the Nation of Islam, I never knew about the transatlantic slave trade.
Mm.
All I knew was about the Holocaust.
Mm-hmm.
I never heard about the transatlantic slave trade until I joined the Nation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wow, okay, like that happened. So even now, just thinking about, and I think I spoke about this with another brother before, Brother Riza actually, just how us not knowing what has happened to us or what happened in those times of slavery is kind of, it kind of shifts our perspectives a little bit as to why we are the way we are. And me saying that is me saying that because we don't have the knowledge of what happened to our people in the type of turmoil that they went through, that we can't see how that kind of affects the way that we are now.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad you kind of touched on that because I with me it made me had a better understanding as to why we are the way we are, and those epigenetics. So there's is very strong in how we're seeing how um how the people, our people, Black people, just are operating right now. So praise be to Allah.
And let me give you one more example of something that I believe is pretty common in our community,
Yes.
right? So with the epigenetics, think about it like this. When I gave the example earlier of the slave master coming inside of the little hut that you had, and he would choose women, even if they were married, didn't matter. But if he wanted to pleasure himself with the woman, he would just literally take her from among you, take her out of the bed, take the sheets off, and then he would take her to his outhouse or inside of his home, usually sneaking away from his wife, right? But he would take her literally from amongst us. So as a man, think about psychologically what that does to you.
Mm.
To know that the woman that you loved, has bore your children, is starting a family with, that she's now in the other room being taken advantage of by another man.
Mm.
And if I voice my anger and discontent, I know that it's going to end in death. I know that I will be made an example of. I know I will lose a limb or have an arm cut off or a hand cut off or a foot cut off, right? So I have to gauge all of that anger and I have to tuck it away and hide it on the inside. So how does that epigenetic marker manifest in 2024? Well, I used to think I had a smooth time with the ladies back in the day, so I know a little something about this, right? But one of the things that would attract women, many women, I won't say all women, but many women, they like the laid back brother who doesn't really show his emotions on his sleeve. That's the one with swag. That's the one that's cool. That's the one that, you know what I'm saying, everybody like. He looks good. He's off in the corner. He's not really paying no attention to the girls. He's not smirking at them. And now all of a sudden they start sitting back, hollering at their young little sister friends. And then eventually somebody wants to get at him. But do you know that that's the same marker from slavery?
Mm.
Because the brother that shows you interest and he's saying, hey, listen, sister, I'm interested. Oh, he's a cornball.
Man,
He's a
no,
nerd.
that is
He's a goofball, right? Those type of conversations are had regularly. But the one who doesn't show it on his sleeve, now as a woman back in slavery, once we had to hide it, we now had to, the woman had to search for it. Does he like me? Okay, let me do some signs. Let me get close to him and see if there's something there. Everything was done in secrecy. So we had to jump the broom in secrecy, which means getting married back in slavery times, right? We had to do all of these things in secret. So it became normal that was the because I'm going to leave it there. But these markers are all throughout how we interact as men and women in 2024. And we have no clue that it has roots back into 400, 300, 200, 100 years ago and less.
And that's why you said that it's so important that we go back into the study guides, because also, like you said, that constant self-reflection, that
Mhm.
self-analysis, just looking, going back and just looking just within ourselves, and just also understanding our history. When you understand our history, understand what our people been through, you can kind of see and understand why our people are the way they are. So praise
Mhm.
be to Allah. Okay, I see y'all bringing in the questions now. Praise be to Allah. So I see here we have a question here from uh I may say your name wrong. Kandawani Muhammad.
Mhm.
Based on the student minister answer of polygamy, how do we combat the alarming rise of lesbianism among black women if the polygamy is not a viable solution? Do black men and our inability to operate properly as men feed the rise of lesbianism among black women?
So I understand what brothers striving to say.
Okay.
Brother Kandwani. Brother Kandwani, again, it's not that that may not be a possible partial solution. However, as followers of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, we wait. We don't take anything upon ourselves to step into that area of polygamy. Not saying, I'm not discrediting it as a solution, because it is clearly a solution in the Quran. But the question is the situation, are the circumstances, is everything else that goes along with that also proper? And is it that time as well? So I don't want to take it away and say, oh, that's not a solution. I'm not discarding it. However, along with that, what's going to stop the rise of lesbianism, and don't just put it on the women, but also homosexuality, because men are falling into it as well, is for us to step away from Satan's world. The reason that everyone is getting deceived and starting to have questions about their sexuality and their orientation is because we're feeding from the confuser.
Ooh.
If all we do is feed from the confuser and feed from their world, and we have very little to none of feeding from the God, then the way of Satan is going to become the way of God in our minds. So the greatest way to combat lesbianism and homosexuality is just to have healthy families.
Mm.
The family structure is what combats lesbianism and homosexuality. But if a woman is thinking that she's 100% whole, then any man who comes into that relationship doesn't stand a chance.
Mm.
Same thing on the men's side. If men believe that we're just 100% and our boo-boo don't stink, then any woman who comes into that relationship is going to have a problem with that man. But once we understand the history, the knowledge of self, the knowledge of God, the knowledge of our sojourn, the knowledge of the enemy, then that allows us, which is why we're spending time talking about this, to be more tolerant with one another, to be
Yes.
willing to work through with one another, not just to have a family, but to heal together as a pair, as a couple. That's really the journey that the black man and black woman, which includes our Hispanic family, is on. We have to heal in unison together. And once we take that perspective of healing to our marriages, then it changes the whole dynamic.
Ooh.
But when we take the mindset of entitlement to our marriages, that is when you fall into Satan's traps. So Satan, if you just look at how he's doing it in the media, going back to what you said earlier, Sister Angelica, there is barely a show that you can watch where they are not throwing that in your face, not suggesting it, not inferring it, not subtly. At this stage of the enemy's attack, they are putting it in your face. Look at
Yes.
this. There's two men on this couch. Look at this. This is in a commercial. Look at this. This is in what's the little show Power that everybody watched. This is in every show almost, even cartoons.
Yes, it
So
is.
because we're only predominantly and on the majority, in a majority instance, feeding from Satan, then we don't have that balance. And that's why in the lessons it teaches us, right? Why do we fear now that we are, or he is, a big man? And what's the answer? Because he taught us to eat the wrong foods. And
Mm.
then they asked the clarifying question: does that have anything to do with the above question number 10? Yes, sir. That makes him other than his own self. What is his own self? His own self is a righteous Muslim. What is all
Mm.
of that talking about? It's not talking about food just from a supermarket. It's talking about what are we feeding our minds on continuously.
Yes.
If you feed more on Hulu, Netflix, and social media, then you do the Quran, the Bible, the words of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the study guides, then you're going to become what you're feeding from.
Ooh.
And that's why some lectures back, I lifted the story of the two wolves, right? Where the little boy asked, where the grandpa said that there were two wolves inside of the human being. And he said, well, which wolf wins, grandpa? And then grandpa said, the wolf that you feed the most. Because the wolf of divine and the wolf of Satan both exist within us. God and devil are there. But which one do you fan the flames of more? That's the one that's going to manifest. So if I feed more from the satanic mind, lesbianism, homosexuality, social media, gossip, slander, then I'm going to turn into a little demon. So when I go to the basketball court and I'm on demon time, boy, yeah. Why are we saying demon time? Because we know that we're walking around as demons right now. Right? We don't use the language of divinity. Why? Because we're not operating in divinity. So it's always beast mode. It's always, I'm a beast. I'm a monster. I'm a savage. Why are you using those terms? Because you know on a subconscious level that you're constantly feeding from the world of Satan. So when we flip that and turn into gods, angels, however you want to word it, however you make it flair and swag, whatever. But once we feed from that divine side and begin to feed that more, then we'll see these elements of lesbianism, homosexuality, and all these things diminish. Because in reality, and I know this from a personal perspective, I've never flirted with that or been interested in the least bit, but I have a sibling, and my sibling aligns herself with that ideology, where she's leaned out and experimented and did some of those things. And it's a sad thing to see, because when you really analyze them and you analyze those who are predominantly in that sphere is filled. And this is why the minister has so much humility when he talks to them, lack of judgment, because we don't want to judge them either, right? Yeah. Because when you really dig into that sphere, you're going to see a group of people who really are not dealing with the demons of self. Most of them, whether they want to admit it or not, have been mishandled, abused. They've been, just say they went through a lot of trauma. And because of their trauma, a lot of times they tend to manifest and vent and express themselves in this opposite extreme. But if they would learn the knowledge of self and begin to deal with the demons of self and the epigenetic issues within the self, and begin to adhere and apply these study guides, you'll watch how Allah begins to heal them over time. And this is why the minister said there is no sin that Allah cannot heal. No matter what you're struggling with, Allah is the answer. You just have to apply the balm that Allah gives to us through his servant, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So we don't judge them, but we can heal from that condition by applying the teachings and doing what Allah guides us to do, which is to heal the family and take a mindset of healing to our relationships and not a mindset of entitlement.
Woo. Brother, teach. Praise be to Allah. Wow. I'm so glad you brought back up just having that humility, because sometimes when we do see that going on, we tend to judge. And it's just so important that we don't do that in this time, because, I just believe we're in this big transitioning period in our lives and just within the world right now, to where, us being in that position of judgment right now, we definitely can't do that, especially if we want to be able to help and be that light for our people. So praise be to Allah. Well, we are
Angelica, if we are really students and followers of the Jesus among us, there's a scripture where it says that Jesus looked past our faults to see our needs. And what does that mean? That means that the Messiah, this Jesus figure, does not judge because he knows that that's a fault. That's a deficiency. But he sees the need because he understands the science. He understands how we need to be made whole. He understands how we need to go on this inward journey of healing and self-reflection, self-examination, self-correction, self-analysis. He understands that. So he looks past our faults. Yeah, I know you bring in homosexuality to me. I know you bring in lesbianism. I know you bring in fornication and adultery to me. I know you're bringing all of these things to me. But instead of judging you according to the law, I'm going to look past your faults. I'm going to see your need. And since your need is you are not dealing with the epigenetic markers and the trauma that let me help you with that. Here's a book. Why don't you take this? Read it daily. Here's your pills. Pop these pills in the morning. Pop these pills before you go to sleep. Start to work on, you know what I'm saying, what you need to work on. And once you have the knowledge of what you're dealing with, but also the solution to it, I know that those faults will diminish. So where love is thick, faults are thin.
Ooh.
But the reason we're so fast to find faults with one another is because our love is really non-existent. And when love is not there, the faults are going to manifest. And the same thing in relationships. When love is not there because you're picking on superficial things, your tolerance level with your wife, your tolerance level with your husband is very low. It's non-existent. But when you love and you want to see her healed the same way that you want, hopefully, for her to see you healed, once y'all come with that mindset, it's totally different. The love is thick. So, man, you missed that one, baby. This bean soup a little crunchy on phone, but we're gonna go ahead and take this L tonight, and we're gonna have a sister square you away next Saturday at class. You know what I'm saying? But you can look past the faults. The same thing on the brother side. I'm sure we're deficient in many areas as well.
I love that. I love that. Wow. I just had that conversation this morning. Praise be to Allah. Thank you so much for that. You breaking it down. Now, I did have one question, the next question here for you, and we wrapping it up. We getting close to our hour mark. I just want to thank Brother Dan so much for joining us for this amazing topic. Like, this topic is not even this is a topic that just cannot be talked about enough, right? Mm-hmm. So praise be to Allah. So when we think about just everything that we discussed today, what strategies in particular can be implemented to address and resolve the war within the Black families?
The same way that the slave master was very intentional with what he did to us, we have to be very intentional to reverse the effects. So if we think we're just going to study and kind of get some good words and watch a podcast and read a little scripture here and there, see, that's you believe in a mystery God. We got to do the work, but the work starts with intentionality. When you look at the 400-year program that Willie Lynch gave to the slave masters in Virginia, right? That was intentional. If you see this manifest, do X, Y, and Z. To establish authority and respect, do X, Y, and Z. It was very intentional. Well, in Message to the Black Man, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad pretty much says it, paraphrasing, that he is Yaqub in reverse. So the solutions that he gives to us are meant and intended to counteract everything that the enemy did to take us off of the square. So to get back on the square, we have to go in reverse, but in reverse means that we have to be intentional. And what do I mean by intentional? If you're married, you literally need to sit down with your spouse and have a conversation, not with the mindset of being right? Not with the mindset, I'm going to win, I'm going to tell you everything, and I'm going to vent right now. No, with the mindset of healing. And one of the easiest ways to start with the mindset of healing is to first talk about the negative within yourself. Before you point out, point in, right? Listen, sweetheart, I know that, I could be better here. I could be better there. I could do this better, that better. I'm going to work on it. Can you just give me a pleasant reminder? And all I need you to do is, don't give me the neck rolling and all the extra. Just in a kind, sweet spirit. Just if you see me veering off, just talk to me. Give me a little gentle reminder. Help me get back on track. And do you have anything that you would like to share, sweetheart? Well, yeah, I guess. You know what I'm saying? And she going to run her list, right? And as she runs her list, she should be intentional about what she's looking to fix. And when you both are intentional like that, to fall victim to what you were intending to be intentional about, is almost like the voice within gets louder. The self-accusing spirit begins to get louder. So when you on that other time and you're not doing what you said you would do, it's like that voice from within, that God within the self, begins to come up and manifest. And you're like, ooh, you know what? Let's start over. I apologize. I'm going to go. And you start working through the healing process. But if we try to be haphazard and just think it's just going to come by miracle, by some fairy dust falling out of the sky, we're fooling ourselves. So everything has to be intentional.
I love that. Praise be to Allah. Being intentional and actually applying what it is that we're learning. I think that's a big thing, being intentional and putting into application what it is that we are learning and studying. And that's why this goes all the way back to what you stated, that self-analysis. We should always be in that state of self-analysis. So like when, and for me, I honestly get excited when like I get tested on something, like, okay, he made me upset. So
Mm-hmm.
okay, all right, I learned about this. What do you do, Angelica? Okay, we're gonna do we're gonna do this. And just being in that state, it actually, for me personally, I don't know for anybody else, but just being in that state of being able to self-correct yourself and not having to be told to be self-corrected,
Mm-hmm.
it really helps in me knowing that I'm healing. I'm really starting to heal because I'm actually being able to see these defects and then being able to address it and be able to address it in a manner that we have been taught. So praise be to Allah. I love that. Yes, yes,
And
yes.
sister, we've been given everything that we need
Mm-hmm.
to do it successfully. The problem is that the prescription that the doctor wrote, we're not applying it. Think about this. The Savior himself, Allah in the person of Master Father Muhammad, the great Mahdi, he said, I want my brothers coming out on Monday. I want them to run it back on Wednesday. I want you to run it back on Friday again. And then I want you to run it on Saturdays for my sisters. And then everybody let's evangelize and come out on a Sunday. So that means Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. That's 5 out of the 7 days that we're doing something as far as feeding from these teachings.
Mm.
And when we have that recipe, that is what the God, using his supreme mathematics, saw as sufficient to heal our condition. But the problem is, if we take those 5 pills, the 5 classes throughout the week, really 4 per gender, right? Because you got Saturday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday for the sisters, and Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday for the brothers, right?
Mm.
If we take those 4 pills, most of us have excused ourselves from several of the pills. The webcast is available. I don't need to go to the mosque. Oh, you missed the pill.
Mm.
Friday, I mean, all we do is sit in study circles. They be having some dumbasses. I be trying to tell them, whatever your excuse is, you just removed another pill. Wednesday, oh my God. And we're removing all of these pills that's meant to heal our condition. And then we look up and we're like, man, I'm still sick. I still got gout and arthritis and I got all these conditions. What's happening? Did you take your prescriptions that the Savior gave you 4 times a week? Well, I took one. The doctor don't need to ask no more questions. The doctor is just going to say,
Right.
listen, I wrote this prescription for you. Do it. You understand what I'm saying? So once we begin to get focused as believers and get back to taking our medicine,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these issues are going to subside, because when the woman and the man are both feeding from the divine revealed word of Allah, again, that love grows, the
Ooh.
patience grows, the understanding grows. And when we abandon it, guess what? It goes in opposite. All of that diminishes. So now your love is thinner, your seeing of faults is greater, and now your lack of patience is manifesting, and now you're arguing, now you're mad, and you're wondering, because one of the most beautiful things that I believe I've learned in my journey in Islam is consistency applying the prescription.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying I'm applying it 100%, but one thing that if you came to Chicago right now, Sister Angelica, I don't know what city you in, but if you came to Chicago right now and said, give me one attribute about Brother Daniel. That brother consistent, man. He be at the meetings. He be at. Why am I always there? Because I believe in applying the medicine. And as I continue to apply that medicine, I believe that over time, Allah is helping me and growing me and healing me and helping me and growing me and healing me. And then eventually we just become a more holistic type of brother and sister, which makes us more fit to be in the courtship process or to be married or etc. So I just recommend we take them pills.
Ooh. That is the greatest solution. We need to start taking our pills now. And honestly, like, it's just being in that atmosphere with other believers. Like, it feels so good. We're dialoguing on the word of God and just healing. So praise be to Allah. I thank you so
I'm sorry,
much.
Sister Angela, I know you're about to close your show. Let me just, it
Yeah,
just struck a chord in my mind.
go right ahead. Listen.
You know that in healing with Angelica, in healing, they have sound healing, right? They usually use the Tibetan singing bowls, and they say that these frequencies and these hertz can heal certain conditions, right? Well, isn't the word of God also music?
Ooh.
So when you say being in the atmosphere is healing, guess what? It is. And to hear your student minister or to hear other believers sharing the divine revealed word of Allah that has been kept secret for
Woo.
66 trillion years, you are hitting hertz, you are hitting frequencies that we cannot even imagine. We may not be able to properly identify them. Oh, that's a C sharp. But just know that you're in an environment of healing. And the more that we're in that environment, the more that we're eating how we've been taught to eat, the more that we're socializing how we've been taught to socialize, we don't even understand. We can look at the obvious things, the overt things, but what are those intrinsic things that Allah set up, the unseen realm that we may not be aware of? And that's why when you hear this teaching, all it takes is the 8 minutes and 20 seconds.
Ooh.
From the sunlight to hit from the sun to the earth and strike the equator and get it to moving, 8 minutes, 20 seconds. That's 500 seconds. That's all you need of this teaching. Get you 10 minutes a day in the morning time and watch how you begin to start revolving and feeding and growing and healing. It's all here. All we have to do is put ourselves, as you said, in the atmosphere.
Ooh. I felt that. Like even just us having this dialogue is just, ooh, I get so excited. It feels so good. So praise be to Allah. Brother Daniel, thank you.
Thank you
so very much for joining me today to discuss this well-needed topic, Battle of the Sexes, the war within the Black family. I would also like to thank my amazing audience in Healing Tribe for joining us today. I pray, and I sincerely pray, that this episode was informative, valuable, and the number one thing, healing to you all. Also, be sure to share, like, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes on any of your favorite podcast station. Closing the Gap broadcast on Facebook, CTG broadcast on YouTube, and of course, Healing with Angelica podcast on Facebook and YouTube to help spread this message of healing to those in need. Also, if you are ready to start your healing journey but don't know where to start, Healing with Angelica is here to assist. Get started on your healing journey today by texting the word READY to 937-313-2466. Information will also be shown on your screen below, including Healing Tribe merch and so much more. Also, a friendly reminder that any services or products that you purchase from Healing with Angelica will be to help to sustain and support Healing with Angelica's podcast and more. So please keep that in mind. Brother Daniel, before we end today's show, do you have any closing remarks for our audience today?
First of all, I want to thank you, Sister Angelica, for the invitation. What you're doing is beautiful. It's remarkable. It's effective. It's influential. And sometimes we can be doing a thing and we may not see the value all the way, and we may not understand the impact all the way. But as we continue to do it in the proper season and at the proper time, Allah will reveal what he was using you for the entire time. So keep the course. You're doing a magnificent job. Keep studying, keep growing. May Allah bless you with any person that you want to bring on this show. I pray that nobody denies you. And I just pray for your success, and I pray that Allah gives you everything that your heart desires. With that, I want to always encourage those who are listening. As I said in this past week's lecture, make sure that we're going back and listening to the minister's Savior's Day message. I know that it happened 4 or 5 months ago now, but what was said from the minister at Savior's Day is unveiling, it's unfolding, and it's really manifesting today and all throughout the year. So he is the man that we all should be listening to. We should all be studying. And we just got to keep a marker and a gauge on how our minister is and where he's at as far as his development. So I encourage us to go back, make sure that we're tuned in and engaged, and always be in a state of prayer and healing for our minister. Because, Allah definitely has him. He's in his bosom. But the prayers of the righteous availeth much. And if there's, any gratitude that we have from what he has given us, then we can only give it back by going to the God and saying, man, Allah, bless our minister, heal him, bless his family. Everybody that he's come into contact with, may you make them all better helpers of him, because we know that Allah chose him to help us heal during this hour. May Allah bless us. Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, praise be to Allah. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you all for joining us today. And again, we leave you as we came. Assalamu alaikum. Peace, healing, and light.